In Lesson 7, students reviewed strategies that we've learned in the past few lessons and linked them to a new strategy, but really it wasn't a new strategy, it just looked a different way, and it was based on partial products. So right now in Lesson 7, students should be able to reach our goal, multiplying a whole number up to 4 digits by a 1-digit whole number using strategies. We've been doing this in Lesson 5 and Lesson 6, and now moving into Lesson 7, we're going to continue with that goal. So hopefully students can choose a strategy and successfully get to their Cougar track with number 3, being able to do it without help from their teacher. To review, one of our lessons was utilizing a rectangle model, which is called the area model, and students were using the 1 factor, the 3, to multiply each of the digits in 258. We were expanding the form of this number into 2 smaller numbers so that students could see the connection to place value and also be doing smaller products using mental math. For this first smaller product, students would get 600 because they're multiplying 3 by 200. The second smaller product would be 150 because 3 times 5 is 15. And they've been looking at patterns with zeros and just adding 1 0. And then the last one, 3 times 8, which is 24. So within this model, students were using these 3 partial products to then combine them and add them back together to find the final product. So the answer to 3 times 258 is 774. And students noticed that they could do 3 smaller problems, and these problems all utilized mental math strategies using patterns with zeros. Within the expanded form model, this is really the same strategy, but without the use of a rectangle. So breaking apart 352 into the expanded form, 300 plus 50 plus 2. And this is just the same strategy as if we were drawing it in a rectangle. These 3 add-ins would be at the top of our rectangle, and the factor 4 would be on the side. Now we know that we're going to multiply 4 times 300. And that's the first one. We're going to multiply 4 times 50 as our second smaller problem, and 4 times 2 as our last smaller problem. So far these 3 parentheses just represent what would be in our rectangle if we were multiplying 4 times 352. These 3 smaller pieces in our rectangle are represented here. So the answers are our 3 smaller partial products, 1,200 plus 200 plus 8. And so these 3 numbers are what's called partial products. We've broken apart the actual factor, 352, and now we're going to put these products back together so that we can find the final answer. And we get 1,408 as our answer to this multiplication problem. Those 2 problems gave us a quick review and warm-up so that students could recall the strategies we've been working on. Today, or within Lesson 7, we then just looked at a similar strategy but recording it differently, utilizing partial products, which we just did for both the area model and expanded form. But now we're going to use those partial products and trying to do it with less steps. so making it a little bit more efficient. To start, we started multiplying by estimating a product. We round 332 down to 300. 7 times 3 is 21, and we add 2 zeros. So we know that our answer should be close to 2,100. I'm going to take a step in the direction of writing the problem out, which looks similar to how the adult and I learned how to write our multiplication problem to start when we were in school. Again, we're not going to do regrouping, which is what we've learned within our education. We're getting closer to that step. So students are now going to be looking at this multiplication problem, also using expanded form, but recording the partial products underneath this problem. So when we were doing this problem, we were thinking of 332 as 300 plus 30 plus 2 in expanded form. And we know that we need to multiply each one of those smaller problems by 7. So we're going to start by multiplying 7 times 300. And we get 2,100. So I'm recording that partial product underneath the problem, lining up my ones, my tens, my hundreds, and thousands. The next problem is multiplying the tens, and we have 3 tens, or 30. 7 times 3 is 21, and then adding 1 0, so it's 210. I'm going to line up the ones, the tens, and the hundreds. And lastly, 7 times 2, 1, which is 14. So lining up all my 3 partial products, one underneath the other, I've already set up my problem so that I can add those 3 partial products and come up with my answer. These 3 numbers here would be inside our rectangle in the area model. And now we're just going to add. And we get 2,324. Looking back to our estimate, this is pretty close. So our answer is reasonable. We took a couple of examples as a whole group when we did this lesson on Friday, and students started to get familiar or comfortable with the strategy of recording partial products underneath the problem. So doing a few, let's start with number 1. To estimate, we rounded 181 to 200, and we multiplied it by 2 to find that our estimate was 400. So our final answer should be close to 400. We think of this product 100 after 181 in expanded form. So 100, 80, and 1. And we're each one of those by 2. So thinking about our rectangle before, 100, 80, and 1 would have been those 3 smaller pieces, and then multiplying each by 2. 2 times 80, 2 times 1. So within the area model, within the rectangle, these are our 3 smaller partial products, and that's what I'm going to list underneath my problem. So 2 times 100 is 200. 8 times 2 is 16, and adding 1 0. And then 1 times 2 is 2. So my 3 partial products have been lined up, ones underneath the ones, tens, and hundreds, and now we're ready to add. The answer is 362, which, looking back to our estimate, looks pretty close. Looking at number 4, 303 is close to 300, and multiply by 6. 3 times 6 is 18, and 2 zeros. So our estimate is 1,800. Now for partial products, we're going to record them underneath the problem, thinking of 303 as 300 plus 0 plus 3. 6 times 300 is 1,800. 6 times 0 tens is 0. And 6 times 3 ones is 18. So when we line up our partial product, we find that the final product is 1,818, which is very close to our estimate. And then lastly, we'll look at number 6. 367 is closer to 400, and when we multiply by 5, we get 20 with 2 zeros, so 2,000 as our estimate. I'm going to break up 367 into 300 plus 60 plus 7. 5 times 300 is 1,500. 5 times 60 is 30 with a 0, so 300. And 5 times 7 is 35. I've recorded my 3 partial products. So now in this strategy, you can tell that a lot of it's being done mentally, and then it's being recorded underneath the problem. Whereas in the area model with the rectangle, much of our thinking was being written down, and we could visually see breaking up the numbers, writing the multiplication sentences, and finding the partial product. So all of the steps were recorded. So lastly, adding up our partial product, we find that the answer is 1,835, which is pretty close to 2,000. So our answer is probably reasonable. So with this lesson, in lesson 7, we talked about it on Friday that this strategy is very similar to the other 2 strategies we've learned in the class. And at this point, students should start to pick the strategy that they like the best and that they can get the correct answer to a problem. So if this strategy isn't one that's comfortable for the students, they should pick another one that works. For instance, the area model here with the rectangle and being able to see all of the work on the paper and how they got their answer, or with expanded form like we did before, where again we were writing out a lot of the steps. So any of these strategies work. They all are based on place value and expanded form, and they all use partial products. So pick which strategy works best for you. We'll be reviewing them again this week on Monday, and throughout the rest of the week as we do more word problems and problem solving with multiplication of 4 digits times 1 digit.